Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Truckers Podcast, FYI. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. It is 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here on April the 22nd, 2022. Thank you for joining me this morning. Hoarding Disorder. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. I hope everybody has had a good week. And here we are into the weekend. But here in Southern Ontario, it is a wet, rainy day, and that is going to continue right through the entire weekend. It's just what it is. April showers bring May flowers, which we've had a considerable amount of rain, but anyways, it is what it is. So maybe you know somebody or maybe yourself who hoards things, who is a hoarder. So what is that? Right? And they call it a hoarding disorder. An ongoing difficulty throwing away or parting with possessions because you believe that you need to save them. You may experience distress at the thought of getting rid of the items. You gradually keep and gather a huge number of items, regardless of their actual value. Value in meaning somehow it might have a sentimental value to you. It's not like a photograph of somebody that you know, family member photographs of families that has that sentimental feeling. Other stuff is just stuff. It's junk. Old newspapers, magazines, books. So what that does, so hoarding often creates extremely cramped living conditions with only narrow pathways. Countertops, sinks, stoves, desks, stairways, and all other surfaces are usually piled with stuff. Maybe you have a room that you're not using and it's just filled. Can't even walk into the room. That's excessive hoarding. In every room, a countertop and table, even the furniture you sit on, you can't even sit on it because it just piled in stuff. So one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is that I was reading an article the other day, and this woman was being evicted because of her hoarding disorder. Now, being homeless is not her first rodeo. She's lived on the streets. She's lived in tent encampments. She's been housed for the last 15 months. Apparently, she received several letters from the housing to tidy up, to clean up. She collects stuff all the time and brings it home and keeps it. It has no other value to her. It has no something that she's not even going to use. really. So this was on the 18th of this month, and I was reading this article. Now, in the article, it didn't say, the housing project did, they didn't say they went to the landlord's tenant board to have her evicted because of her hoarding disorder. It just says that she had received several notices and that not acting on those notices and cleaning up her unit, this is resulting in her to being evicted. People had stepped up. For instance, a social worker stepped up, but then she had to back out because there's a shortage of social workers. And then an organization stepped up and said, well, we can hire a company to come in and take the stuff out, which was also rejected by the housing authorities. So we'll just put her back on the street. I found it very disturbing that, here in Canada, I mean, we have a housing crisis, we have a homeless crisis, we have a healthcare crisis, and yet it's just that's simple, I guess, just to put somebody back out on the street. She obviously, so hoarding ranges from mild to severe. So it seems to me that reading this article, she had a severe case of hoarding. Now, homeless people who are homeless, they gather items all the time. And you see them with their shopping carts, and the shopping cart is just overfull, or they have a couple shopping carts, and it's all overflowing. Yes, it has clothing in there, but it also has items that they don't even need. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Doug, from Ontario, Canada. So today I was talking about hoarding disorder. And the reason why I want to bring this topic up, and I'll just reiterate for a minute because you just come on here. I was reading an article back on the 18th of this month, and it was about this woman that she was facing eviction because of her hoarding disorder. Now, she has been homeless before. She's lived on the streets. She's lived in tent encampments. She's in the past, so she has been so in the article, she's saying that she's been housed now for the last 15 months. But over this period of time, these 15 months, she has been hoarding items. So now the place has become unlivable, basically. Every room in her unit is full of stuff. She has received several notices from the housing authority to clean the stuff out or be evicted. So it came down to that she was going to be evicted. And so, she had a social worker. Social worker had to opt out of helping her because they have a shortage of social worker. Another agency stepped up and said, look, you know what? We can hire people and we can help her. We can get this stuff out, which was also rejected by the housing authority. And just before you came on the show here, I said, here in Canada, we have a housing problem. We have a healthcare problem. And we have a homeless problem. It's just too easy to put somebody out on the street because they have some sort of disorder, and one of them being a hoarding disorder. Homeless people have a hoarding disorder. And if you haven't noticed, when they're pushing their cart or they're pushing and pulling, they have two carts and it's full of stuff. It's overflowing. Yes, they have clothing in those carts, but they have things in there that they're never going to use. Yeah, I guess it's just it's I guess it's just something, they feel that they have something that belongs to them. As you do, you have something that you have things that belong to you. But you have a roof over your head, so you have furniture, you have a TV, you have a bed. They don't have any of that stuff. And like I said, this lady, she's not new to being homeless. She's been living on the streets before. So she knows what it's like to be on the streets. But not helping somebody and not working with them. I find it, you know, I find that just a total disgrace, just a lack of empathy. And when people are trying to step up and help, and then they also are rejected because, oh, we've given her enough notices. She's received 5 notices already, and no, she's not doing what we're asking her to do, so she's out. That's ridiculous. So hoarding ranges from mild to severe. And it sounds to me that she had this severe case of hoarding because she's done this, I guess, just most of her life from being homeless. Now, people with a hoarding disorder, and maybe even not even notice that or even realize that they have a hoarding disorder, they don't even see it as a problem. So even to take part in, clearing out stuff, that to them it has value. It has some sort of value. And it doesn't have to be a monetary value. It could just be, a sentimental thing. It doesn't like a sentimental thing might, you have just stacks and stacks of photographs of family and friends. Those are sentimental. Items that people hoard, that may have that same feeling, but it doesn't have any relevance to a family photo or a family heirloom. They just gather stuff. It could be books, it could be magazines, it could be newspapers. And they fill every room and every space to where it just becomes inaccessible to even move around, sleep, because you're just piled sleeping on the stuff that you've piled everywhere. They don't even understand why this even happens, right? Now, they even talk that, the first symptoms of hoarding disorder often appear during the teenage to early adult years, right? So you make it and save too many items and gradually build up a clutter in living spaces, stuff like that. So you're always just bringing stuff with you when you move to different places, and it could even just be box. You never even open up the box for 5 years. So why do you still have it? Could start off little things like that, but it could also be, they say that you're growing up with a hoarder. So you've lived, I mean, there's an untidy house with things everywhere. And then of course there is, to the extreme, where every room is filled with something. So maybe you've grown up that way. But we carry our possessions with us wherever we go. We keep stuff. You know, So you're cleaning out your garage. You're moving. You're cleaning out your garage. You've got stuff in your garage that you probably had in there for 10 years, and you never even looked at it for 10 years. Is that hoarding? Well, I don't think it is. I mean, it's not all cluttered everywhere. It's all on a shelf, possibly, or maybe you have to kick things around in your garage, stuff like that. But that's not hoarding, in a sense, to where people can't even move around in their house. Yeah, we keep things. I may have some possessions that I've had for a while, you know, in boxes. Probably even forgot even what's inside the box. Never even want to go look because it's not important. The other things they talk about, with symptoms of hoarding disorder, getting and keeping too many items that you may not have a need for, you don't have the space for. You have an ongoing difficulty throwing out or parting with things, regardless of their actual value. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a monetary value. To them, it's just whether, like I said, whether it's photographs or heirlooms and stuff like that, is to them, that's what it feels like. But in retrospect, it's just junk. And it's not. See, so somebody who is homeless, do they have problems with planning and organizing? I mean, they plan their day out. They're always doing something. They know what they're going to be doing from day to day. They're planning all the time. They're organizing their day. And they know they're gathering up things. They have stuff all the time. So when they do get housed, they're going to carry that with them. And they are going to go out and they're going to find stuff and they're going to bring it home and they're going to keep it. And they're going to go out and get more, right? So, like I said, when it comes to disorganized piles of stacks of items such as newspapers, clothes, paperwork, books, and it could be sentimental items. I mean, we don't normally want to part with that, but how much sentimental items do we really have that's useful to you? So what else also happens, build up of food or trash to a large unsanitary levels. Well, homeless people always have that. And when they get housed, they're not cleaning up. At no fault of their own. So that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I don't know what happened. They said the 18th was the day that this individual was going to be evicted. So whether they carried through with that, I haven't seen any other article about it. I mean, I can assume, because her social worker had to opt out because they had a shortage of social workers, and they didn't accept the help from an agency, and saying that she's had ample time to clean this out. We've given her several notices to clean this out. She's out. So I can assume that she's back living on the streets again. So with instances like with people like her, with this hoarding disorder, you believe these items are unique or that you need them at some point in the future. You feel emotionally connected to items that remind you of happier times or represent beloved people or pets, or you feel safe and comforted when surrounded by things. You don't want to waste anything. Right? So a hoarding disorder. So look, we like to collect things, right? Maybe you're a collector, right? So hoarding disorder is different from collecting. So doing normal collections. So people who have collections such as stamps or model cars, right? They carefully go out and look for these specific items, right? Maybe you're a coin collector. Maybe you like to collect old news articles. There's certain things that you might be, interested in history. Maybe about your hometown, your city. But you don't have them all cluttered everywhere. You're organized. You have everything in its place. Maybe have your little collection of your model cars and stuff like that out on display. People even um, hoard animals, and there used to be this program, this TV show on TV called Hoarders. I don't know if you ever watched it, stuff like that, and they've had episodes on there where people hoard animals. A lady would have 100 cats living in her house. And, these are just stray cats. She just finds them in the neighborhood, just walking around and picking up cats and bringing them home. And the same thing with people when it comes to other items. They walk around the streets and they just find stuff and they bring it home. And they go then and find more stuff and they bring it home. Soon the carport gets full. Soon the living room gets full. The kitchen gets full. There's stuff piled on the stove. You can't use the stove. Counters are all full. Floor is starting to get filled up. And when they talk about seeing a doctor, they may not necessarily feel that they even need. They don't think they have a problem. Now, if you know somebody who is a hoarder or stuff like that, you can blatantly see that they have a problem, right? So if you can get someone to talk to their healthcare provider or a mental health provider with expertise in diagnosing and treating hoarder disorder as soon as possible. So the causes, well, they say it's not clear what causes hoarding disorder. Genetics, brain function, and stressful life events are being studied as possible causes, so that they're not pinpointing, they're not narrowing it right down to that. And the risk factors, hoarding usually starts around, they say it starts around the age of 15 to 19. And it tends to get worse with age. Hoarding is more common in older adults than in younger adults. I mean, if you start hoarding around the ages of 15 to 19, I mean, that's has to go back to living at home, because your parents are hoarders. You see that, you potentially maybe see that as a norm. This is acceptable. This is okay. I mean, at the age of 15 and 19, what possibly could you have that you need to keep? Well, I mean, when you're 19 years old and you're moving away to go to college or university, or even at the age of 18, you're moving out, stuff like that. Well, what are you going to bring with you? Well, you're going to bring your clothes. You're going to be living in a dorm. What other things do you need to bring with you? If you're hoarding other things already at 15, why would you need to bring that with you? They can't make out why you would do it. There's no explanation of why, but you're going to do it. Anything that you think, maybe because it's going to make you, maybe because when you do that, it's something that you hold on to, and while you're away at university or college, it's something sentimental to you from home, so you stay connected. You feel connected. So they even talk about, so the risk factors that they include here is a personality. And one is that many people who have hoarding disorder have a behavior style that includes trouble making decisions and problems with attention, organization, and problem solving. Organizing stuff and what you're going to do with it. So solving that problem, what you're going to do with it. Family history, like I said, there's a strong association between having a family member who has a hoarding disorder and having the disorder yourself, because you lived in that household and it is just cluttered with junk. And it might even be caused by a stressful life event. Some people develop hoarding disorders after experiencing a stressful life event that they had difficulty coping with, such as a death of a loved one, divorce, losing possessions in a fire, being homeless. So the complications here, when people, I mean, the excessive or the excessive hoarder. So the complications obviously increase risk of falls, injuring or being trapped by shifting and falling items, because you've got them all, like your magazines and newspapers are just all stacked up and they're just like falling away from the wall, and it only takes just a little kick of your foot and you find yourself under the whole pile of magazines and books or whatever you stacked up. Family conflicts, loneliness and social isolation, and conditions that aren't clean, and it can be a health risk. It can be a fire hazard, and especially if you have everything all cluttered all over your stove, can be a fire hazard. Poor work performance, legal issues such as evictions. And that's why when I was reading this article the other day about this lady being evicted because she has a hoarding disorder. And other mental health disorders, as they feel, is also linked with other mental health conditions: depression, anxiety disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder. Then they, with prevention, you know, the little to so the little is to understand about what causes a hoarding disorder. There's no known way to prevent it. However, as with many mental health conditions, getting treatment at the first sign of a problem may help prevent hoarding from getting worse. And people probably are not going to do that. People may already be, already are embarrassed. Maybe it is because a mental health disorder. They're already embarrassed because they have a mental health disorder. They carry some sort of mental health label. So there's really no, to diagnose it, there's really no treatment. It's just an ongoing problem for people who have that hoarding disorder. I hope that this lady, I think that it was in Alberta, I believe, that where this was taking place. And I haven't seen anything else about it. So she certainly doesn't want to be homeless again. Nobody wants to be homeless. And that's just a vicious cycle. She doesn't want to go back on the streets. She knows what it's like to live on the streets. And she talks about what it was like. And she's seen her friends die from overdose and the living conditions. There's no place for a human to be living on the streets. There's no place for that. And unfortunately, we have a homeless crisis right across Canada. To put somebody back on the street because they have a disorder of some sort, that's just morally wrong. No empathy. And the same thing, comes to, I want to talk a little bit about, reno evictions, which seems to be becoming a norm because, as rents are going up, because when you're the landlords cannot double your rent while you're living in your unit, right? They can't do that. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Doug, from Ontario, Canada. So they can raise your rent annually. I think it's like 2%. Right? So what landlords are doing now, and even corporations are doing now, is doing a reno eviction. A lot of people out there don't know their rights. So part of their right for a tenant is that if you receive a notice to vacate the property because we're going to do a rental eviction, that doesn't mean you have to leave. That will be decided by the landlord's tenants board. Some landlords will come along and give you an initiative to get out. They'll give you money to get out and to avoid going to the landlord's tenants board, because even right now they know that it's going to be a process and it's going to be a long wait, even before it goes before the board. So, and landlords are I was reading another article, landlords are openly saying that I'm doing a rental eviction to get you out so I can charge more rent. So that unit that you're renting, let's say you're paying $800 a month, and the landlord knows that he or she can get $1,700 a month. It isn't about anything else. This is about that monetary gain. And they could care less what your situation is. Whether you're on a disability, whether you're on a low pension, whether or not you're on welfare or whatever the case may be, and it seems to be targeting. Obviously, it is targeting the people who have a lesser income. And they're openly admitting to these rental evictions in order to increase the double that rent or maybe even triple that rent, because in the city of Toronto, a one-bedroom apartment is about $2,200 a month. Here in the city of London, where I reside, a one bedroom now will be going anywhere between $1,600 to $1,700 a month. And of course, landlords aren't targeting people who are paying that kind of money because they don't need to, because that's the market rate. They're only targeting people, and with unfortunately have that lesser fortune, and that's who they're going after to reno evict in order to get monetary gain, and that's what it is, with showing no empathy. And I can call that person a narcissist, because a narcissist will do whatever it takes for them to have that glorification. So they will move the heavens and earth in their benefit to get what they want. Now, there has been a talk about beefing up the tenant's protections and to prevent rental evictions. So when are this actually going to come into play? I don't know, but they were saying now that renters will have new protections against the so-called rental evictions. And so the proposed changes that include requiring landlords to give tenants a 60-day grace period to move back into the unit once the renovations are complete at the same rent they were paying before. So people, if you were paying rent $700 a month, renovations are done, you move back in, it's $700 a month. The requirement is one of several changes that the government wants to propose to help renters. Also, they want to put in is that when tenants is required to vacate a unit to allow for renovations, landlords would be required to provide a report from a qualified person starting that the unit must be vacant to allow renovations to take place. And where a tenant has said they wish to move back in once renovations are complete, landlords would have to give the tenant written updates on the status of the renovations and when the unit is ready for auction to be occupied. See, when a landlord wants to do a rent eviction, that tenant in that unit has first rights. Is what's happening. So by giving updates to the tenant when the renovations will be done to be moved back in is not happening right now. So what happens is, oh, you've been out of, you say you're able to stay. Well, obviously you're able to stay with somebody. Well, that was taking place, and then 60 days goes by, and you go by there and you see that the renovations are done, and somebody else is now living in your home, paying $1,600 a month. And this is an ongoing problem. And it's the same, it's the same landlords will use this tactic of saying, oh, I have a family member that has that I want to move into your unit. And rightfully, the landlord can do this under the Landlord's Tenancy Act. What's also happening is that relative is not moving in there. A new tenant is moving in there because once you move out, the landlord can raise the rent to whatever they want. And they'll use this tactic to evict you and then put somebody else in there who is no relation. And they said it was a relation and it's not. And so they can up the rent. These two pieces of that legislation in the landlord's tenants laws. So rental evict, as far as I'm concerned, the rental evictions, has to be changed, obviously, and this is what they're trying to do. And the other one, it needs to be removed from the tenancy laws of a relative moving into your unit, because it's just bullshit. Because it's not a relative that's going to be moving in. And see what happens if in that case when that happens is this: if you can prove that it was not a relative that moved in, a year has gone by, and maybe you have somebody on the inside, who knows that for a fact it wasn't, you can take the landlord to court. And if you can prove it that it's not a relative that moved into that unit, then so if the rent was increased at another $800 a month, the landlord would owe you that $800 a month for a year. But there is no protection. So on a rental eviction, there's no protection that you move out, they renovate, somebody else moves in, pays a higher rent. There's no protection. And we're seeing this all too often. Every time, I'll be, reading a news article, rental eviction. And I'm just asking myself, what the hell is going on? And then reading an article that landlords are admitting that the only reason why they're doing this rental eviction is to get higher rent. We have a housing crisis. We have a homeless crisis. To simply put somebody out for your monetary gain and with no regards of to where they're going or whatever the case may be, you are a narcissist. You know, they also were talking about, well, so they're looking at um, hiring more adjudicators. Um, you know, we have a serious backlog at the Landlord's Tenant Board already, you know, to deal with, you know, other legal issues, you know, people, you know, not paying their rent. Obviously, if you're not paying your rent, well, then you are subject to be evicted. You know, but that's taking a lot of time. That's putting a lot of hardship on on landlords. You know, I'm not talking corporation, just your every day Joe landlord renting out an apartment. You know, so it's causing them a lot of financial hardship because you're simply not paying your rent. That's different. You know, than facing a rental eviction. So they're talking about but by hiring these adjudicators, because I mean, it's just a shortage of people in that field. Um, One of the NDP leaders are saying that she's not seeing anything new with these rules that will guarantee a tenant can get their home back. So what their other proposals, what they're doing is doubling the fine, you know, for your average everyday landlord, you know, fine from $50,000 to $100,000 fine, and for corporations, $500,000. If in fact that it is proven that you are renovating only to get these tenants out and only to be able to charge double or triple the rent. So whether this will work or not, I don't know. Here in Canada and, you know, North America, the United States, Europe, or whatever's like that, right? There shouldn't be such a thing as homelessness. Unfortunately, there is. You know, here in the city that I reside, they haven't built any like social housing since the 80s. And anybody waiting to get into social housing, there's something like a 7 to 8 year wait list. And anybody who needs a unit that can has accessibility for disabilities is anywhere from 10 to 12 year wait list. But now that everything has become a crisis, now we act. Yes, we are building. There's been affordable units going up around the city. They've been doing that now for the last couple of years. other projects going on. There's another area in the city that is going to be made into single family homes, townhomes, apartments, but this was bought by corporations. My fear for people is that, are there going to be affordable housing units on that land? I mean, it's going to add 9 more streets. Are there going to be affordable units on that land? I fear not. So, it's so when it comes to these rental evictions, I mean, there have been people um, who have successfully um, won their case in the Landlord's Tenants Board, um, that they get that unit back, period. And this is the other thing, though, too, right? So when they talk about how to protect yourself against rental evictions, excuse me, as the rental markets heat up. So, I like to stay on this topic, but I want to talk about this on tomorrow morning's show on how to protect yourself against rental evictions as the rental market heats up. So I'm going to bring, because like this, because I can go on about talking about other, talk about this topic, and then what am I going to talk about tomorrow? So I did talk about 2 things this morning. So, a hoarding disorder and a little bit about the rental evictions, but I like to carry this on tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And we could talk about how to protect yourself against these rental evictions. So I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for listening in. And I'll be back out here for 8 o'clock in the morning, tomorrow morning, Sunday the 23rd, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you can join me tomorrow morning, that'd be great. If you can't, I understand. And until then, enjoy your weekend. Today, tomorrow here in Southern Ontario, Canada, it is going to be nothing but rain. But we have things to do, and we can't let the weather get us down, and we have to go do the things that we have to do. So, April showers bring May flowers. Isn't that the saying? We've had plenty of rain, and quite frankly, I'm getting a little tired of it. But what do you do? So join me tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and we will discuss more about rental evictions and how to protect yourself. Take care. Be safe.